Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to another edition of the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. My name is Jeremy Betz, joining you as always here live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can check us out wherever live streams happen from the Steel Curtain Network and Fans First Sports Network. We're happy to bring you podcasts all day, every day, and talking Pittsburgh Steelers football. And then if you go to Fans First Sports Network and you check out all of our other content there, there's plenty of other podcasts, networks, and write-ups for other teams. And we're still growing. And also wanted to throw it out there, if you are wanting to contribute in some way to the Fans First Sports Network, there are opportunities for that as well. Go to fansfirstsports.com and sign up today. You can comment and follow along with all of our articles, shows, and then you can also sign up to be a contributor as well and go through the proper steps there to get involved. And we'd love to have you on board the Fans First Sports Network team, and especially here at the Steel Curtain Network. It's a fun place. We enjoy our time together. Speaking of which, I've got a special guest today, a guy I've been dying actually to get on a show with, because he just has so much knowledge about the game of football that he can share with us. So I'm going to bring in right now our very own coach, Kevin Smith. Kevin, how are you doing today, man?
Hey, Jeremy, what's up, man? How are you? Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to do the show with you tonight.
Good deal. Yeah. So I have just absolutely been excited to get you on. We tried last week, didn't work out. Got you on this week. I know you've been busy. So tell us a little bit about what you've been doing this weekend. I think it was lacrosse that you were at a game for or something like that. Tell us about your
weekend.
My
son around, man. I got a 10-year-old son who's playing a whole bunch of sports and chasing him around. And our high school team that I coach here in New Jersey, it's crazy, but we play a game in a month, August 25th. So we're getting ready for that, and getting Fans First off the ground, man. It's just been a busy summer. So, but I love it, man. Any opportunities I get to talk to fans about football, talk to people like yourself, it just honestly, I feel blessed to be able to do this for a living.
Absolutely, man. Now, hey, I'll tell you this: I played football in high school for 3 years, varsity, running back, linebacker, small school. So I played both sides. And I got to tell you, man, coaching has always been something I've wanted to do. So you're kind of an inspiration to me. I'm going to do it someday. I know I'm going to get a chance. But I appreciate what you do for Fans First Sports Network, for the Steel Curtain Network, the coach perspective that you give us here. And it's a lot of fun to listen to your shows. I know you've been doing a lot of whole NFL stuff for Fans First, and that's been great. The Call Sheet, a fantastic show. If you haven't checked that out yet, go ahead and do that. But Kevin, we're here to answer some questions from our listeners. And so listeners, go ahead and submit those questions. While you're thinking up your questions though, Kevin, I wanted to bring something up here that just kind of been on my mind recently as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they're going to be doing this year as a team. And so when you talk about schematics and how they're going to attack other opposing teams on offense, how they're going to defend, the ball, or defend opposing offenses with what should be a really good defense. A lot of talk has been that the Steelers are kind of zigging while the rest of the league is zagging, and their scheme is going to be a little different. They're going to be a little more smash mouth than some of these other teams are. Do you kind of see that as being the true scenario for what the Steelers bring to the table this year? Or is that kind of more window dressing, and it's going to really end up being a lot of the same things that we're seeing from everybody else?
That's really the $1 million question. What are we going to see? Everybody keeps talking about this being the year you get to really see the Matt Canada offense. And for the Matt Canada apologists, that feels like, hey, this is something we should be excited about. For the critics, it feels as though that's maybe just another excuse. And you're just going to see more of the same. I think some people feel we've already seen it. It's smoke and mirrors, and there's not a whole lot of substance there. But what the Steelers appear to be doing, if you think about the draft and their off season, is investing heavily in big personnel, physical guys. They're going to have a run first mentality. I think that they understand that Kenny Pickett's got a lot of room to grow, and that they want to take as much off his plate as they can. And I mean, there's no better way to do that than being able to establish a run game and then get that quarterback comfortable within the framework of the game plan before you start putting a ton on his plate. So, I mean, you look at bringing in Isaac Seumalo, you look at bringing in Herbig, you look at drafting Darnell Washington. These are big physical guys. And I expect the Steelers to base more out of 12 personnel, which is a 2 tight end package. Then they've been an 11 personnel team for over a decade now, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end. I think they're going to be more of a 12 personnel team. So it is an interesting contrast to what a lot of the rest of the league's doing. A lot of the rest of the league is heavily invested in this sort of horizontal stretch game where they're trying to make defenses run sideline to sideline. Defenses are getting lighter and faster as a result. And the Steelers appear to be countering that by getting bigger and more physical, which is actually a pretty smart move when you think about it. It's just this never-ending chess match between offenses and defenses, where the offense made the latest move, which was to stretch everybody out. The defenses responded by getting lighter and faster, and teams like the Steelers are now saying, "Hey, what's going to be best for us is if we try to now bully those lighter, faster defenses."
Sure.
So it'll be interesting to see, no doubt.
Are they designed to win the AFC North? Is that kind of what you see like as a basic building block for how they're trying to approach things? Are they designing themselves to attack the Ravens, Browns, and Bengals defenses that tend to be a little bit lighter? I mean, you've got guys like Cleveland, who's got a big front 7 now. But I mean, and then on offense, it's just all these high powered, offenses that try to just put up major points. Are they designing to win in the AFC North, and then you kind of hope beyond that you have a chance, or are they kind of making a league-wide decisions here on that front?
I'll be honest. I don't think that they're building their roster around the AFC North. I think that what they're doing is that they're looking at themselves in a post-Ben Roethlisberger world, and they're saying, hey, we're going to rebuild, but we don't want to have to bottom out to do it. So what's the best formula for that? How do you bring in a new quarterback, a rookie, and still have an opportunity to be successful? I mean, the goal for the Steelers every year is make the playoffs, and Mike Tomlin's unapologetic about that. And so I think that you look at that and you say, well, the best way to do it is to provide that quarterback a strong run game and a solid defense. When you go back to Ben Roethlisberger, the start of his career, that was the formula for success back in 2004, 2005. You gave him those things, and then you let him grow into becoming Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that they're trying to recreate that formula for Kenny Pickett. So I'm not sure if it's a reaction to the AFC North so much as it's a reaction to their own roster and what they think is the formula for success for their young quarterback.
Good deal. That's the way it should be. Build around your team, and then hope you can get where you need to go based on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. When you think about coaches, it's like every coach wants to be a master of the whiteboard. I've been in a million clinics with guys, and everybody wants to try to out X and O one another on the whiteboard, and that's just sort of it's the nature of the beast. Everybody's like kind of trying to show you everything that they know, but it doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you can get your players to execute. And so the Steelers could bring in some well-known offensive coordinator who's really elaborate with the X and O's. But if that doesn't fit what Kenny Pickett can do, it's not gonna work. I think about like Mitchell Trubisky when he was in Chicago. He had Matt Nagy as his head coach and offensive coordinator. Nagy's a really good offensive mind, but Nagy was putting stuff on Trubisky's plate that Trubisky wasn't ready for. And everybody said, well, Trubisky's bombing out. Well, that's partially true, but Nagy didn't help him because he didn't fit the scheme to what Trubisky was capable of. And so in a way, I think the Steelers were overly conservative last year, but I think they erred on the side of conservatism because they wanted to do what they felt was best for Kenny Pickett at that time. And I definitely think you'll see him expand the scheme this year because he's capable of more.
That's what the hope is. We're looking forward to seeing it this year. Let's hop into some fan questions here, Kevin. The first one from Steelers Freak. Do you guys really believe that a 1970s approach will win a ring? I mean, that's a conversation I don't know if the Steelers are ready for, but I know fans are definitely ready for it, adding a 7th ring. I think it gives them a shot to kind of play some throwback football this year and see if they can just be more physical than everybody else. And I think you're going to see kind of the personalities of how defenses specifically want to really play out in week 1 when you face a 49ers team that plays that style of football on defense as well. That throwback style, we're bigger, faster, stronger than you, and we're going to beat you up. And so the Steelers are going to have to bring their own in that regard. Do you kind of agree with that sentiment, or do you have a different viewpoint on this? Do you think that maybe this throwback approach can take them all the way?
I think the Steelers are in a process of evolution. And I think like I was saying a minute ago and what you just alluded to, the beginning of the evolution of the Kenny Pickett era is to try to win with a formula. And that formula is be physical, play great defense, protect the football and offense, control the clock, run the ball, keep the game close. And then if you think back to last year, like week 16 and 17 against Vegas and the Ravens, hey, maybe Kenny Pickett can do some good things at the end of the game and win us some football games. I don't think that that's the formula for the next 5 years. I think that's the formula for 2022, 2023. By the time I think you get to 2024, the hope is now you're starting to expand it, that you can base out of that stuff. And when defenses now react, you can start to do some other things. Like when you mentioned the 49ers, one of the reasons the 49ers are great is because on offense is because they can hit you with all that power run stuff. They can hit you with the stretch game and all those things. But if you load up with big personnel and you get slower on defense, they can beat you with a speed game too. And I think that the Steelers are going to sort of move in that direction, provided of course that Pickett can handle all that. Right. So I mean, if we're just answering the question, do I think a smash mouth 1970s approach can win you a ring? No, I don't. And I don't think the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, but I do think that it's a part of the evolution towards a recipe that can potentially win them the Super Bowl, that blending the two worlds, the physical downhill run game with a spread passing game that you can, use out of the same personnel groups when defenses try to take away your run. I think that's the goal. And I think that hopefully is part of the 2, 3, 4 year plan, whatever they have in mind.
Yeah, I think you're kind of looking at not so much a 1970s approach, but maybe an early 2000s approach, like you talked about earlier, where you're supporting your young quarterback while he grows into what he's going to be. And then eventually down the road, you're going to have to rely on that quarterback to make his own place in the offense, to create his own success in a way, like you mentioned, because teams are always going to figure out scheme at some point. You're just going to have talent then that can transcend scheme and be good enough to win when the defense has you figured out. That's why Roethlisberger was so good. That's why some of these teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, like the Cincinnati Bengals, the Buffalo Bills, they can just go out there and it doesn't matter if maybe they've had a sluggish quarter or two because the defenses are figuring them out. They can then just take the game over and be better, because they've got the talent to be better than you. So definitely going to be support while you can. And then you're going to have to see growth out of Kenny Pickett in this offense eventually to where they're kind of making their own success. Absolutely.
Yeah, the goal is obviously going to be for the passing game to catch up to the run game. That they want the run game right now to be ahead of the passing game. But in order for them to really be able to compete with the Cincinnati's and the Kansas Cities and those guys in January, then the pass game's got to catch up. And I think that's really the direction they're headed.
Absolutely. All right, we got Afton, a regular listener, saying, Coach Smith, what are you most excited to see from training camp? You told me you're going to get to go to training camp. We're just going to miss each other. I think you're going to go Wednesday, August 3rd, right? Wednesday. And then I'm going to hit the Saturday or Thursday or something like that. August 3rd.
Yeah, we'll miss each other by a couple of days. Yeah, I went last year. It was awesome. It was the first time I ever went to training camp. It was such a cool experience. Latrobe's a beautiful place. And you kind of walk in. Have you ever been, Jeremy, to training camp?
I haven't. This will be my first time, but I'm excited.
Oh, okay. Well, it's cool, man. It's like, it's a little like Field of Dreamsy, kind of like nice. You roll up, Latrobe's in the, this beautiful setting and you come in, and when you get there, you walk through. Of course, you walk through. This is like the the concession tent where they're selling jerseys. And my son hit me up for an $80 Kenny Pickett jersey. I think he's worn twice, but you come out of the tent and then you're at the top of the hill, and then you sort of like walk down the hill into the practice facility, which is really beautiful. I mean, that's just obviously like everybody's attentions, all eyes are on the offense in Pittsburgh. And you want to see like, all right, well, what's the leap? Where are they? How have they changed up from last year? I mean, you think about the offense last year, it was functional down the stretch and it gave them a chance to win some football games, but still they averaged, I think, 18 points a game for the season, maybe 21 points a game over the last 9 games or so. They got to get better than that. Right. So how are they going to do it? Right. And that's the thing I'll be most interested in. What's going to be the new approach or what are going to be some of the wrinkles that they add in order to get a little more explosive?
Yeah, absolutely. That's and be exciting on offense because that's something we haven't seen for several years now. And you've always had exciting players that have potential, but that potential hasn't turned into much. I mean, we talk about Chase Claypool, we talk about even like Najee Harris. So far in his career, we've seen some good things, but you haven't seen really that take over the league type back that you wanted to. Chase Claypool, obviously part of a trade a couple years ago now to the Chicago Bears, and so it's always been a lot of hype and not a lot of actual output on the field. So hopefully the Steelers can move on to more of a, hey, we figured this out now. We've got high profile, high powered guys who can make plays, and let's get this rolling. I think when I go there, when I see training camp, I want to see how the coaches and players interact, because that's always such an intriguing thing to me, is how Mike Tomlin commands his team, how the position coaches run through drills and everything. And, you kind of see the whole scenario there for how this team gets things done. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see. I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Real quick, two things about that comment.
If there's any other questions that we've got, I'm sure there are, but
while you're looking, I'm going to follow up on that comment that you just made. Two things from last year's camp that really jumped out about the coaches. One, Mike Tomlin has such a presence on that field. I mean, he is absolutely the head man in charge. And when he is on the field, there's like this sort of gravitational pull where people want to be near him. He bops around the field. He gets involved in just about everything. He's not running anything, but he's in charge of it all, which is kind of fascinating to watch. So when you go, just follow Tomlin with your eyes for a little bit and look at how many groups that he interacts with and the way that people respond to him. The respect that the team has for him is absolutely noticeable. And the other thing that jumped out at me was Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach, and what an active teacher he was. He was one of the most energetic and just sort of involved position coaches. And he had the offensive line just on point the entire practice. I mean, there wasn't a wasted moment. There wasn't a wasted rep. And you could see just in that little bit that was a group that was going to get better if they just followed his instruction and if he continued to teach them with that type of passion and energy. And they did. The offensive line got much better as the season progressed. And this year, with the upgrade of talent that they've added, I'm really excited to see what he can do with that unit.
Absolutely. That is going to be one of the major talking points of the Steelers season, because if the offensive line can really improve, then obviously everything else kind of improves from there. So it's going to be fun to watch. Here's a good question from Sherry Richards, probably something that we've all thought about or discussed at some point, but let's take a look at it again here, Kevin. And she says, what does your ideal year for Kenny Pickett look like stat-wise? My first article for the Steel Curtain Network was kind of diving into this. And, I don't necessarily think he has to be an all-world quarterback this year for the Steelers to be successful, especially from a statistical standpoint. Obviously, you want to continue to see some of the things that he was able to do at the end of the year, where he kind of took over games where it was necessary, where he made plays in the waning moments in when the chips were down, and he was good enough to rise above those pressure moments and make plays. I think you really saw that in the Ravens game, where just some of the throws he made on that final drive were just elite level timing and anticipation throws, and then making on the touchdown pass, making something out of nothing there as well, where your left tackle just gets beat on a rush, and then you just got to get outside and make a play to throw that ball and make that play. You saw those things, kind of what we consider the intangibles side of things. Now,
Yeah.
stats wise, you want to see that improvement there as well. But I made the argument that maybe stats wise, what this offense will ask of Kenny Pickett, first off, and then what he will provide might look more like a Jacoby Brissett numbers in Cleveland's offense last year, where it was high efficiency, not like incredible stats, where he was on pace for 4,000 yards and about 20 touchdowns, as opposed to maybe Joe Burrow stats where it's like 4,500 yards, 5,000 yards, and 28 touchdowns. You know what I mean? So I kind of fall in the line from what the Steelers are going to ask him to do specifically, and what a standard jump would be from him, that maybe we see more of a high efficiency, lower output as far as high end stats go, but you still get quite a jump from Kenny Pickett. What do you think about this topic?
No, I agree. If Kenny Pickett throws for 4,000 yards this year, the Steelers are going to have a bad season. And the reason I say that is because it's going to mean that they're in a lot of games where they're losing and they got to throw the ball to catch up, because that's not the recipe that they want to follow to win football games. They don't want him to have to throw for 300 plus yards a game. They want to be able to establish the run, throw the ball when the opportunities are there. So numbers wise, it's not going to blow you away. I mean, two areas where I think he really needs to improve and where the stats will be telling. One, touchdown to interception ratio. I mean, 7 touchdowns and 9 interceptions last year. That's not going to get it done. Now, he was at 1 and 8 at the bye, 1 touchdown and 8 interceptions, which means that he went 6 and 1 after the bye, which is a much better formula for the Steelers. I would think that he's going to want at least a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. If he can be 2-to-1, whatever those numbers look like, right? 23 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, something like that. That's going to be massive improvement. The biggest area is going to be red zone. I mean, he had the lowest completion percentage in the NFL amongst starting quarterbacks in the red zone last year at 38%. He's got to get his red zone completion percentage up around 50 or better. The league average was only like 53, 54, which tells you how hard it is to complete passes in the red zone because of how the compressed field and how aggressively defenses play. But he's got to get up around the league average in the red zone for the Steelers to be more efficient, because, I mean, one of the weirdest statistics from last year with the Steelers is they finished 6th in the league in time of possession, and they finished 26th in the league in points per game. And I mean, logic would suggest that if you're possessing the ball a lot, you're scoring a decent amount of points. But that wasn't the case. So what it tells you is the Steelers were holding the ball. They were kind of driving from 20 to 20, so to speak, but they just weren't finishing drives. So they got to get better in the red zone. So honestly, man, if I'm paying attention to 1 or 2 statistics all year long for Pickett, it's not going to be yards or things like that. It's going to be touchdown interception ratio and red zone efficiency.
I love it. And he's got the weapons to be efficient in the red zone. I mean, you've got a basketball team out there if you want to put it out there.
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. And I think Allen Robinson's a really big addition in that regard. I think he's a very underrated but important addition to the offense.
I agree with you. And even when he wasn't putting up huge yardage stats the last couple of years, he was still a threat in the red zone, especially the year before last in I believe Chicago, where he had less than ideal output from a yardage standpoint, but I think he still scored like 7 or 8 touchdowns that year. So definitely had a hand in being a red zone target. You've got Darnell Washington coming in. They're going to be able to do multiple things out of the same personnel groupings down in the red zone. So that's going to help them out a lot as well. Something that you've talked about a lot here. Before we go to a quick break, I wanted to pull this up. We talk a lot about the jump from Kenny Pickett, but a lot of that has to do with his weapons making a leap as well, as far as how they're going to play football. George Pickens, to me, is one of the key factors in this. So Afton making this statement here, not a question necessarily. I want to see a big jump from Pickens. I want to see Calvin Austin III make some splash plays. This offense definitely needs more splash, Kevin. I think we can agree on that for sure. But do you see George Pickens specifically being kind of the key to unlocking this passing game for Kenny Pickett?
100%. His route tree's got to evolve. He was pretty much confined to routes run outside the numbers last year. He operated pretty much from the numbers to the boundary, which is a really small area of field, and he was really good when he did it. But they need him to operate in the middle of the field more. I mean, the Steelers absolutely have to attack the middle of the field more in the passing game. They're certainly building themselves in that direction. You mentioned Washington, but Pickens has got to get to the point where he can now begin to like read zone coverages and make what are called sight adjustments, which are like when a receiver runs an in-breaking route, you break towards the middle of the field. You got to be able to locate defenders and understand if it's man or zone coverage. If it's man coverage, you're going to keep running. If it's zone coverage, you're going to find the seam and settle down. That's hard, man. It's all fluid stuff. You got to be able to read that stuff and react in real time. And I think that's the next jump in Pickens' evolution. And if you can do that and open up the middle of the field for Kenny Pickett, then that's a giant asset. As far as Austin goes, everybody's excited to see what he can do. His speed is tantalizing. The Steelers, this is kind of a sad statistic. They were last in the NFL last year in touchdowns from beyond the 20-yard line. They only had 2 touchdowns all year long from outside of 20 yards. And so you think to yourself, well, if they can create explosive plays from deeper down the field, then obviously it alleviates some of that red zone pressure. And so hopefully Austin's a guy who you can rely on for some of that. I mean, the NFL, it's so rare in the NFL where you just run by a guy for a 50-yard touchdown pass. So you have to set that stuff up. So a lot of this comes back to Matt Canada. Can he set it up? But if he can set it up, a guy like Austin sure gives you the opportunity then to be able to get over the top.
I agree with you 100% there. Let's take a quick break on the audio side. Here live, we will not go anywhere. We'll be right back, and we'll keep answering your questions and talking Steelers football with Coach Kevin Smith. Here we are, right back in just a second. All right, Kevin. Hey, I wanted to ask you real quick, now that we're back on the show, you're famous for having the Cliff Harris is still a punk handle from the old BTSC days. Just kind of give us why you did that. Or is that a play that just like sticks out to you hugely in Steelers history, or what's going on?
That was the moment I became a Steelers fan. I was like seven. I might have been 6 or 7 years old. It's the first football game I ever remember watching, Super Bowl 10.
Okay.
And my family, I live here in South Jersey. They were all Eagles fans. So we're watching with the family. And so, of course, they hated the Cowboys. So everybody's rooting for the Steelers. And the famous Cliff Harris play with Roy Jarilla happens and Lambert slams him to the ground. And like, it was like a superhero moment for me. I don't know. I was like a 6 or 7 year old kid. That was like one of the coolest things like to see. And then I remember my uncle jumping up and yelling like, Cliff Harris is a punk, and like that stuck in my head that he said that all those years later. So yeah, I don't know. When I joined the blog or whatever, I was like, I need a cool name, and I just jumped in my head. So I was like, I bet that Cliff Harris is still a punk. So
I love it, man. I've wanted to get the backstory on that for a long time. So thank you for sharing with all of us here. That's good stuff. All right, let's answer a question here from Brian Mizwa. Do you think Omar got another move up his sleeve, possibly improving the inside linebacker spot? Kevin, I'll throw this out to you. You think he's got more on his plate, or do the Steelers feel comfortable with that inside linebacker group more than maybe fans do?
No, I think he's got another move. I don't know if if that's the move, but that's the move I'd make, because just speaking for myself, I'm not comfortable with the inside linebacker spot. Sure. I'm very nervous about it. It just makes me nervous because they're asking a lot of Cole Holcomb. They're basically asking him to be an every down linebacker, and he's a good one, no doubt about that. But with his injury history, if he goes down, I think that they've got some serious issues there, because Landon Roberts is not an every down backer. He's a 2-down thumper. He's a guy like a Vince Williams, but probably with even less coverage skills than Vince Williams. And I think the Steelers are going to compensate by trying to do some mixing and matching. I mean, obviously they'll use Mark Robinson, but he's got a lot of growth. I mean, he only had 40-some snaps last year as a rookie, converted running back. He's still got a lot of room to grow. I think they'll use Keanu Neal a lot down in the box when he's in there at safety, and he'll play some de facto linebacker. But it just makes me nervous that, like, if Holcomb goes down, they're just without an every down backer, and I can't imagine they're comfortable with that. I'm going to guess that they're sort of going to monitor the waiver wire and those types of things. I mean, the last few years they've gone, during the season or training camp and picked up a backer. It wouldn't shock me if they did it again.
Yeah, I agree. This feels like a move that happens cut down day or a couple days after, when the teams go from 90 to 53. I think they do that all in one fell swoop again this year after the second or the third preseason game. So it'll be interesting to see where along the process that a move like that could be made. But I agree with you. I think Omar Khan, Mike Tomlin, they've got to be thinking that if there's any area of this defense that we need to improve, then we've got to do that. But in any case, I do think Omar Khan probably makes some more moves, maybe not even just one, because roster shifts so much. Pay scales change so much in the next few weeks as far as what you're going to be putting forth on your 53-man roster, that teams are going to have to make sacrificial lamb cuts, if you will, for salary cap implications down the road as well. So you're going to have to keep an eye on that for sure.
And one thing we've learned from Omar Khan is that he's not a guy who just kind of sits back and lets things come to him. He's going to be aggressive and go out and get it. And I think that if he feels as though there's room to add or room to bolster the roster in a way, then he's going to make that happen. So I'll put it this way: I'll be shocked if there's not another move sometime in August.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a position battle, a very intriguing position battle for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the offensive tackle. I'm just going to label it offensive tackle, not necessarily left tackle or right tackle, because there's really three guys here that we're going to be keeping an eye on. That's the rookie, Broderick Jones, coming in, who the Steelers would probably love to see just kind of take control of that left tackle spot, and then maybe let Dan Moore Jr. Battle with Chuks Okorafor for that right tackle position. As Joseph Brown here is suggesting in his question, do you think Dan Moore Jr. takes Chuks' position? How do you see this playing out, Kevin, over the course of training camp? Do you think the rookie wins the job, or are they going to kind of bring him along a little more slowly and let Dan Moore, who by all indications has had a great offseason, showed up in good shape, looks to be ready to maybe even take a step forward at left tackle? Is this something we're going to see some shifting around that we didn't maybe foresee at draft time?
Yeah. I mean, the offensive tackle conversation has been framed all off season as a battle between Moore and Broderick Jones. But I kind of agree with the question here, that I think really in the bigger picture, it's more of a battle between Moore and Okorafor, because the Steelers didn't draft Broderick Jones to have him sit. I think Moore will start. I really do. When the season begins, I'll be shocked if Broderick Jones is the starter when the season opens, when you consider the slate of pass rushers that they're going to face. It's Bosa in week 1. It's Garrett in week 2. It's Max Crosby in week 3. I mean, that's a murderer's row of pass rushers. So I'd be shocked if they threw Broderick Jones out there against that. But when you kind of think bigger picture, I think Dan Moore's a damn good run blocker. I think he's a guy who, he gave up 7 sacks last year. That's a big number. But maybe as a right tackle, he'll alleviate a little bit of that pressure. So I just, they're trending in a physical direction up front. They're bringing in big physical maulers, and Chuks is the odd man out to me in that scenario. He's the most sort of finesse oriented lineman of the starting 5, and if they want to continue to go down that road, it makes sense to keep Moore in the starting lineup. So. I'm not great at predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if Moore winds up on the right side when Jones takes over on the left side.
Not a betting man then, Kevin?
You know what I've learned, man? I've learned that, like, in the betting world, optimism is a weakness, and
Oh, terrible.
and I think I'm optimistic by nature. I talk myself
Sure.
into things, and in the betting world, you got to be a whole lot more practical than that.
Sure. You're the guy who takes all the overs, right?
Yeah. You always feel as though or somebody will talk me into some stupid parlay, and I'm like, you
Right.
never win with the 3-team parlay. Everybody should know that, but I can get talked into it easily.
Right. Yeah, you just get that. I'm the same way. I'm the eternal optimist, so I get that thought process very, very much so. This is a good question here. Let's bring this up. Another one from Joseph Brown. Will Canada understand how to use 3 tight ends in the red zone effectively? The Steelers have 3 viable tight ends, maybe even 4, when you include Zach Gentry and Connor Hayward in that group. I don't know if they're going to keep 4 tight ends. That would be something that they haven't done recently. So that'll be something to watch, that position battle for sure. But do you see them using a lot of 3 tight ends down in the red zone, or is this a 12 personnel team wherever they go?
I mean, if you look back on Matt Canada, the college coordinator, him at Pitt, at LSU, he loved the 3 tight end sets, the really or 2 tight ends and a fullback, which in this scenario would include Hayward. But here's the tricky part with the Steelers. If you go 3 tight ends, you're taking either George Pickens or Deontay Johnson off the field. And how comfortable will the Steelers be doing that? If they go 3 tight ends, then they got to make a decision. Are we better with Connor Hayward or Zach Gentry on the field than we are with George Pickens or Deontay Johnson on the field? And situationally, maybe they are. I think they're much more likely to go 3 tight ends in a scenario that includes Freiermuth, Washington, or Gentry and Connor Hayward than they are with 3 traditional tight ends. I don't think you'll see a Washington, Freiermuth, Gentry package, because if you're going to do that, you might as well just bring in a 6th offensive lineman. Only 2 of those guys are going to be eligible anyway, most likely. And Gentry's not enough of a receiving threat to justify him as a receiver in place of a guy like Pickens or Johnson. So I think I will not be surprised to see Hayward with 2 other tight ends. I will be surprised to see a true 3 tight end package.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm almost of the opinion that I'd be surprised if Zach Gentry even makes this roster based on some of the different areas that they're going to need players at. But you never know. It's going to be something to watch for sure. Do you have kind of a thought process
when you
on
go
that?
to training camp? That'll be interesting. When you go to training camp, and I'll do the same when I'm there.
Yeah.
Watch Washington in the one-on-one drills as a blocker, and see where he is, because that'll tell you a lot as to Zach Gentry's fate. Because if Washington can handle that true inline blocking role, which Freiermuth can do it to a degree, but increasingly Freiermuth's effectiveness is being seen as a receiver, as a slot guy, as a motion man, etc. But they're still a valuable role for a true inline blocking tight end. And if Washington can lock that role down, that'll make it tough for Gentry to make the roster. So that'll be really interesting to see in training camp.
Absolutely will. Let's bring up a comment and question here from Russ Obenstein. What's up, guys? And on the chat, can't wait for Cam. It's going to be super chippy. Who does Cam pick a fight with first? He will, does it. He does it to fire the team up. Who's it going to be? Who gets on Cam Hayward's hit list first there?
I think it's 100% Herbig. It's going to be Herbig. Yeah. Everything you read about Herbig is like his teammates hate him in practice. He's like the practice guy who doesn't understand that it's practice, right? He's the practice guy who's still going 100% and finishing blocks, and he's not doing the like NFL guys. A lot of the time they have an understanding. I mean, I'm going to go hard and you're going to go hard, but we're going to kind of like look out for each other, right? When we know that the microscope's not really on us, then we're not getting after it, because we're kind of preserving ourselves a little bit. But every once in a while you get the guy who just he doesn't quite get that. It's not in his nature. And I think that guy is Herbig, and I think he'll get under Cam Hayward's skin. So I'm looking for that one pretty early.
That'll be fun. And Nate Herbig's a big dude. Yep. Cam Hayward will have his work cut out for him in that type of situation, no doubt. I think, when I go to camp, I'm looking for obviously that chippiness from the defense. I think you've probably seen that, right? The defense comes out hot. They want to make things tough for the offense. They talk a lot of smack. You hear that from those reporting on it, right? It wasn't as much as maybe is reported back. Is the defense kind of really going after the offense, or does the offense get its own at times as well?
Well, because of the nature of offense being so predicated on timing and repetition, early on, defenses are always way ahead of the offense.
Yeah.
Everybody loves to talk about the 7 shots drill that they do in training camp every year. I've actually incorporated that into our high school program. Our first day of live hitting in high school, we do 7 shots. And oh my God, you want to talk about the kids love it. They freaking love that drill so much. They're so geeked up for that drill. But the defense wins every time because they're so much farther ahead. Like really, I mean, I'm not saying that all you got to do on defense is get off the ball, but early in the season, if you're just getting off the ball and you're just flying around and running to the football before the offense has built in all its constraint plays and all its counters and done all the little shifts and motions that can displace the defense, et cetera, then when it's just like, downhill football, the defense is always way ahead. So yeah, the defense tends to take it to the offense early on, and the offensive guys get pissed, and that's when things get heated up, especially when the trash talk starts. So I don't think it's like it was back in the Joey Porter days where Joey Porter was running his mouth like from the moment he stepped out of the locker room. But it is pretty. It's still fairly noticeable. I mean, and that's another wonderful thing to see at camp, the intensity of that battle between the O and the D.
I've often wondered and as the Steelers hopefully have a really good defense this year, if you're an offense trying to learn your offense, if you're trying to learn your schematics and your play calls and your counters and your audibles and everything, is it helpful or harmful to play against such a good defense all the time? Because I'm sure that they have sessions where the offense gets to do its thing, where the defense just kind of is there. But, in the live hitting sessions, does it get frustrating, like you said, for an offense to go up against a really good defense and maybe not be able to hit everything that they want to hit because the defense is hitting everything they want to hit?
Yeah. Well, you have different tempos in your practices. You have what you call a demonstration tempo, which is where guys are taking their first 1 or 2 steps, getting to their block, getting to their read, whatever it might be, but then letting the play carry itself out. And that's for the execution. But then, of course, you have the live tempo. And in the live tempo, I think in the short term, it feels detrimental to the offense because, again, you're going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Right. And it all depends, how much are they going to throw at you, right? Like when we had our first, we're not in pads yet in our high school program, but we had an offense versus defense session last week where we brought our first team groups together. And it was supposed to be walkthrough tempo, but of course it quickly ramped up. And the moment the offense like hit a couple of decent plays, the defense started stunting and slanting and stemming and moving the secondary. And then it was over. The defense just dominated because the offense wasn't ready to handle all that stuff yet.
Sure.
So I think in the short term, it's tough. And the people who cover the teams, that's where they have to be objective. And I think the Steelers beat writers do a pretty good job of not investing too much stock into like, hey, Kenny Pickett threw 2 picks in the team session today. Well, I mean, one of the biggest reasons might be because the Steelers defense might be throwing the kitchen sink at him, and he just might not be ready for that just yet. But in the long term, that's beneficial, right? In the long term, it's going to help you improve. It's going to teach you things that you're going to need to be successful. What better defense to practice against than the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are one of the more complicated defenses in the NFL. So I have no doubt that the long-term benefits outweigh the short-term consequences or risks.
Absolutely. Good stuff. All right, let's answer one final question here before we sign off for the weekend. It's from Afton. He asked, do you think A-Rob makes an on-field impact? I'm going to say yes. I think he does. I think this guy comes in with a new lease on life, if you will, in Pittsburgh. That may be the hopeful optimism coming out of me again. But I just think that with his veteran presence and I just think that Kenny Pickett is going to develop a rapport with him pretty quickly because he just brings some of that. I've been there, done that. He knows on his in breaking routes to settle in when it's zone coverage or to keep running when it's man coverage. He knows those things that maybe George Pickens still learning. So Kenny Pickett may be able to use him as more of a security blanket, at least mentally, in the game. So I think he does make an impact, and it may not be huge stats. I think if he has massive stats by the end of the year, it probably means George Pickens didn't work out or he got hurt or something like that. But as long as he's got a complementary role in this offense, I think he can be very impactful on the field. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that maybe he's the new guy on the block and it's going to take a little while?
No, I agree 100%. I think complimentary is the right way to say it. He's a 6'3", 210-pound veteran who understands coverages and the nuances of playing the receiver position. And that's such a huge security blanket for Pickett. He didn't have that last year. He didn't have that veteran, especially in the slot in the middle of the field. And I think that will allow Calvin Austin, when he gets on the field, to play a little bit more on the outside, where I think everybody sees Calvin Austin as a slot receiver, but he was just as good on the outside in college. And when you do some things formationally, like, for example, you put like 3 guys on one side of the field and you force the defense to kick over there, you can get Calvin Austin matched up one-on-one on the backside. And that's going to be a problem for defenses simply because of his speed. And it's going to lessen the route tree that he's got to run. I mean, for Calvin Austin to get plugged into the slot, the route tree for the slot is really complicated. So, let Calvin Austin kind of come along a little more slowly by giving Robinson the lion's share of the reps in the slot. So I think he's going to play a big, big role. And I think, again, man, I think this is one of the most underrated but important signings of the offseason.
I 100% agree with you. The trade by Khan was great. We didn't give up anything really for this to make it happen. You're not paying him a lot of money either. So it's a low risk, high reward potentially for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I love the fact that Khan went out and made that play. It's going to be fun to watch this team as we hit training camp this week. Can't believe we're going to be seeing Steelers on the football field very soon. Preseason come just around the corner as well. We thank you all for listening in to the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. Again, we're trying to close out your weekend with just a fun show. Kevin, thank you, man, for coming on. Any final things you want to say before we get off the air here? Where can they find you on Twitter? What can they look for as far as content you're putting out over the next few days?
Yeah, Twitter, KT Smith, FFSN, or at KT Smith, FFSN. And my podcast, The Call Sheet, runs on Wednesdays, and we're doing a lot of football talk about, not Steelers specific, but just about the game of football in general. And then on Steel Curtain Network this week, I'm starting a series of just playbook kind of things, and we're going to break down the back shoulder fade that the Steelers use and why George Pickens was so effective running that. So get a chance, check all that stuff out. And this was a pleasure, man. Jeremy, thanks for having me on. I could talk Steelers football all night, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And good luck to you on your high school football season as well. As it's
thanks.
Quickly
We're
approaching.
creeping up, man. Creeping up. So.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to ramp up here pretty quickly. So good luck to you there, and we'll stay in touch. Obviously, we'll have to do a show again. This was a lot of fun. But thank you all for joining in, listening in. That's going to do it for us here today. It's been fun. We will talk to you again next week on the Steelers Sunday Night Q&A. Have a good one.